Today we're going to talk about Yeung, the basic stance of the Wing Chun system. The Yeung is not a fighting stance, it's not an application stance, but it is one of the fundamental training exercises for the legs. The idea is to strengthen the legs in a narrow enough stance to make it practical, so it's not too wide so that you're even flexible and immobile, and it's not too narrow so you haven't got the ability to support yourself when you're doing application with the hands. The Yeung can be considered the foundation of the Wing Chun system. Very much like underneath this, the floor here, you've got nice and concrete. People spent a long time digging holes in the mud, filling it full of concrete, getting it level, so that it's strong enough and powerful enough to support the walls, the roof, etc., etc. But you can't see the result of all that hard work. And the basic stance training is exactly the same. The actual stance itself, you won't see the direct results of the stance in its triangulated structure. What you will see is the results of power, stability, and the ability to drive power upwards and forwards. So we're going to go through the simple application of Yeung. Yeung itself translates as the character 2 grabbing the goat or goat grabbing stance. The character 2 comes from the shape that's formed when you open the basic stance. So we'll start going through the basic stance and we'll give a little bit more depth of explanation. To start the basic stance, you should always start with your feet together. Part of the principle of Yeung, the reason why we open it the way we do, is we're using your feet as a measuring tool to open up a stance that is 1, unique to yourself, and 3, in proportion to your own body and works correctly for yourself. Ideally, we want the centre of the heels to be approximately your own shoulder width. So, by putting your feet together and having no gap between, and next thing we do is we bend the knees. And the reason we bend the knees is to make sure you can't lift the toes off the ground and use the back of the heel of the shoe or the front of the shoe as you open the stance to falsify that width. So we then, having forced the knees down, pressing down here so it forces the feet down onto the floor, you're now forced to slide open. So using the centre of the heels, you slide open and then transferring the weight momentarily onto the balls of the feet, you then slide it a bit further out. And then we just tilt the hip girdle a little bit to make sure we've got a nice perpendicular posture. So the Yeung gets its name because the distance between the toes is shorter than the distance between the heels. And character 2 in Chinese when written is a short line with a longer line beneath it, so that's what that represents. What we're looking at is turning the knees in, not by twisting the knees, but by adducting at the hips. Your knees are only designed to bend in one direction. They do not want to be going sideways. If you're pressing sideways pressure and pulling inwards excessively, then you are going to stress the medial ligaments and the cruciate ligaments, and you're going to cause yourself more problems than you've solved through training. So the knees only want to bend in the one direction. So we adduct the stance at the hip, because the hip allows you to rotate nicely and comfortably. And we adduct it here, so the knees are bending in the direction that they're designed to bend, in the way they're meant to bend, but they press forward over the toes and forward. If you draw a line from the centre of the heel to the centre of the toe, project it forward to both, where those two intersect, that represents your centre line. And it's that point that you are aiming your knees towards. So some people will tell you it's an isosceles triangle, a 45-degree triangle, whatever. At the end of the day, it comes down to your personal flexibility, the strength of your legs, and it will change and improve as you continuously train it on. The tilting forward of the hip girdle is really important. You're not thrusting your groin forward, but you're just tilting the hip forward. What it does is it tucks in at the lower abs here. It tilts the hip girdle around the pelvis. It puts a pull on the front of the quadriceps here, it puts a little bit of excessive strain, so it puts an equality of strain down the quadriceps. It puts a pull around the back of the hamstrings as they go behind the glutes here, and it tightens up the glutes at the same time. What it also does is, if I stand sideways here, what it also does, as you tilt your hip girdle forward, it takes out any excessive curvature that could be here because you've got your hips back, and it straightens out the back. So it gets your back in alignment much more natural. So you get this just natural curvature where there's a little curvature at the top, the spinal column is verticalised here, and then the tail of the coccyx just rolled underneath. That means that because you're in a nice vertical posture and you've got no excessive curvature in the spine, it means that the lumbar muscles and all the supporting muscles are relaxed. It means that you are not putting any unnecessary tension anywhere. If you train in tension, later on you're going to have to train it out. And at the same time, if your back is twisted or the muscles are tight, then you're not going to be able to move quickly. So that habit is going to be developed, excuse me, and you're then going to have to learn to relax a lot more. So what we're looking for is a nice vertical posture. What I'm going to really talk about is the checklist. The checklist to make sure that when you're training yourself at home, that you are as close to correct as you can be, starts off with just dropping your hands. Drop your hands down and extend your index finger. And what you should find is that as you relax your hands down, your index finger points approximately through the centre of your heels. If it misses your heels, then either, with your arm vertical, your stance will be too wide, or your stance will be too narrow. So if it misses the centre of the heel, and instead of hitting here, it's hitting carpet, it's the width of the stance that's the issue, which means you haven't opened it properly and you need to close it to restart it again. So that's the first thing. The second thing from the side, which you can't see, but I'll show that perspective in a minute, is that from the line down here, taking it through the front of the clavicle here, if I drop a line through the front of the clavicle from the earlobe through the clavicle, that line drops down vertically and will just pass behind the hip socket here, and then it will miss the knees completely, and then will pass down through the centre of the heel. That's your verticality. If you're leaning forward, your body mass is forward, effectively your face is in front of your hips. You know, if you train for that, then eventually you're going to be blocking punches with your teeth. If you're leaning back, you're just presenting your testicles to something that's going to kick you and hurt you. Your body will be off balance, you'll have no support structure, and you have to remember power comes from the floor. This is the whole reason we're training basic stance, to develop power from the floor. Okay, Alan to face me for a second. Give a very simple example. If Alan takes up some really strong stance, no matter what it is, puts his fist out. If I push on the end of here, with a nice, powerful, wide stance, you can resist an awful lot of force. But if I leave his arm there, nice and powerful, but I get to put his feet side by side, yeah, and then I get you to stand on your tiptoes, no matter how good your biceps and triceps, your quads and your hamstrings, your lats and your pecs, your balance is affected very easily because you have no stability. So the most important thing to remember in martial arts is power comes from the floor. If your stance is too wide, where it's powerful, yes, you are immobile, you can't get out of the way. So not only when they throw a punch can you not get out of the way fast enough, but that rigidity in your stance and that low, wide base means that when they do hit you, and they probably will because you can't get out of the way fast enough, you're absorbing all their force. The light on your toe stance gives immense flexibility, the ability to move out of the way and slip and dive very quickly. But the problem is, you don't have the power base. So in order to deliver the power base, you then may have to lean in and throw the body forward to hit, which is fine if you're in a protected area like a ring, because if you miss the punch and you fall forward, your kidneys are exposed, but they're not allowed to take advantage of it. Your legs and weaknesses here, they're not allowed to bust them out necessarily. On a Saturday night in a street fight, if you throw your punch in and it misses, you know, all sorts of pain and damage can occur. So Wing Chun is probably the best compromise stance, where it's wide enough to be stable and powerful, but yet narrow enough to be flexible. And the reason why we go through the basic stance opening every single time the same way is to make you familiar with that particular type of width. So if you put your feet together again. So always bend the knees first, prevent you lifting the toes. Slide out, and then slide out. Don't lift them up. Create this V shape in front, but don't twist the knees excessively. The reason why we have this odd looking stance is that if you turn your feet parallel to each other, if your feet were parallel with the hips forward and the knees bent, the quads and the hamstrings, they would still get a workout. The cruciate ligaments, the medial ligaments, they would still be under duress and stress and training. All the way down the calves to the Achilles tendon, that would all get a workout. But the adductor group on the inside of the thighs, they're really doing nothing. They're relaxed. And it's the adductors that stop you getting kicked and dumped on the floor. It's like a slide tackle in rugby or football coming down. It just rips your leg out and you fall in a heap on the floor. And on a Saturday night, you're going to get danced on. So we need to train these adductors. The problem is in the stance with the feet parallel, if you then pull in with your knees and you start putting pressure this way, you're putting sideways leverage onto your knee joints, which is compressing one of the ligaments, it's stretching the other one, and it's not good for the knees. So to train this equal tension on the inside of the thighs as well, we rotate the toes and the knees in equally. And we press forward. So as I say, the knees are now bending in the direction that they want to bend in. It's natural to them. There's equal stress down the medial ligaments. There's equal stress across the cruciates. All the rotation is being done up here. But now, the adductors on the inside, which go all the way up into the psoas area of the hips at the top, they're now under compression as well. So all the muscle groups are now under tension. And they're under equal tension. So the tension in the quads is matched by the tension in the hamstring. Because the two muscle groups are in equality, that joint can't flex because neither muscle gives way. You don't have to tense the muscles up. Don't actually go and tense them. If you tense the muscles up, then you are making yourself overly rigid. You don't need to tense the muscles up. What you need to do is relax. And you relax, so you you sink the stance by relaxing the muscles. Because of the structure, there's no way that it can collapse. This joint can't function here and flex, because these two muscle groups, the hamstring and the quads particularly, are under equality. They're under equal amount of tension, so neither one is going to cause that to flex. You can't collapse down this way because you've turned your feet underneath. The hamstring can only go to, the Achilles tendon can only go to a certain length. It prevents collapsing down this way. For you to fall down forward, you'd have to kneel. To do that, your heel would have to come off the ground, and your heel can't come off the ground because your body mass is focused directly through it. So if the stance is correct, then it's almost like having a third support point here, which in effect, the resultant force is supporting you. So because the muscles can't give way, you can relax the muscles. You don't have to hold them under any unnatural tension, and just let your upper body mass press down onto the hip girdle, and that can be the trainer and the weight trainer for the leg muscles. The more you do this, the better and more stable your basic stance will be in application, whether it's turning or stepping, etc., etc. The principle of the UGQMR is for you to train at home solo, whether it's doing a form, whether it's doing punches. You can do it while brushing your teeth, you can do it while checking your email, you can do it while watching TV. It's not something that's specific martial art training. I've got to do it in a gym. This is stuff that you do at home, little bit and often, frequent. By the time you train this, you will be at a point where as soon as you start to using turning or stepping, the lessons learned and the work done in the leg muscles will start becoming a dynamic function rather than a static function. But as far as a training stance is concerned, this is what you're trying to achieve. So just a reminder, simple checklist, you drop your arms, fingers should point through the heels. That's your first checklist. Your second checklist is effectively pull the trousers tight without leaning forward, glance down. If you glance down, visually your kneecaps should stop you seeing the toe of your shoe. If you can see your shoe, you're pulling in excessively, you're not pulling in enough, or your legs are too straight. And then the last one, tongue-in-cheek admittedly, is if you look in the mirror while doing your basic stance, if you see the Eiffel Tower, that's really good. And if you see Marble Arch,